Whoa, let's do art critique. Whoa, let's do art critique. Whoa, let's do art critique. Hello guys and welcome to my art critique video. You guys have submitted some awesome work that I'm going to critique in this video, and hopefully you will learn something in the process. But before we start, I just want to say that my Patreon is up and running. I really want to go full time creating cool 3D stuff for you guys. So if you want to support this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Soon I will be dropping tutorials and giving away 3D models, textures and other cool stuff. So I will definitely make sure that you get some bang for your buck. So let's just jump right into the video with the first submission submitted by Giraldo. I believe he's from Spain and he's an architecture student who uses Blender as his main tool for visualization. First of all, good job Carlos, this is a very nice render. I'm a really big fan of soft lighting and I really think you nailed it. Overall it's a very pleasing render to look at, but of course there is room for improvement. Spoiler alert, I am not an architect, so I will only be critiquing this on the technical aspect. So first of all, I think the composition is a bit off. I assume this is supposed to be a visualization of the building in the center, since he is an architect, so that should definitely be the main focus. I feel a bit annoyed by the fact that the camera is so far away from the building, so I can't really see what is going on, and I think there's a lot of empty space around the scene that we don't really care about. I personally think the solution to this problem would just be to move the camera a bit closer to the building, and I already feel like it's easier to see what is going on. Next up is the lighting. Even though I like the lighting, I definitely feel like there's room for improvement. This might be difficult to see on YouTube, but if we zoom in on the lamps, you can see a very sharp shadow that is actually a bit above the lamps. This is not only very unrealistic, but it's also not that pretty to look at. I believe it's because he has been using an area lamp. If you use an area lamp close to a wall, you might get this very sharp shadow. However, you could change this to a spotlight and crank up the strength, and then you will get this very realistic soft shadow that actually looks like it's been cast from a lamp. Generally, I just think the lamps are too bright. Okay, this might not be the best reference, but as you can see, lampposts are not that bright. I really like the trees, they look very nice. However, I think it's weird that it's the same trees inside the building as outside the building. Because it's all the same trees, we have to assume that the trees inside the building will eventually be as big as the one outside the building. Just imagine, it will totally destroy the building. I would probably create bushes instead, as this will also give some variation and really separate the building from the outside landscape. I know it's a low poly scene, but I would probably have beveled the edges just a little bit more to get that smooth edge. I think these edges draw too much attention and we really don't want to put any focus on these edges as they are quite boring to look at, and the main focus should definitely be on the building in the center. These are all very small changes and overall I think this is a great render. So good job Carlos, this render is definitely approved. Next up we have Akramul Hassan Riyad, who has 1 year experience with Blender. He has created this very cool animation, which is sort of a commercial for these headphones. I think it was a part of some challenge he did. Unfortunately, the music he is using in the video is copyrighted, so I took the freedom to add some music to his animation, which I think matched quite well. But nevertheless, it's a very cool animation, so let's watch.
Seeking happiness amidst the trouble. I'm reaching out for this against the struggle. Visions of how it should be got me drinking double. And finding out what pieces fit can be a dangerous puzzle. Admittedly, I ain't been perfect, all my flaws recorded. Friends I need the most lately ain't been that supportive. I feel like I need a break or just a fucking sign. Cause I know when they play they tape, that shit ain't touching mine, it's flaws, nigga. Yeah. I feel like I'm solar powered, the sun making me darker, these clouds.
Well, first of all, I think there's a lot of great elements in this video. I think the intro is definitely the strongest part. It's very smart to reveal the logo first and then the product afterwards. In this way you both tell the viewer what the name of the company is, and then they know that the attention should be in the headphones. Also, the lighting is very good. This rim lighting is a great example of a great use of lighting. We can't see the product because it's all black, but the fact that we're given just a little edge of the product gives us a curiosity of how it might look, so the lighting is really used to create a visual interest. I think the weakest part of this video is the camera movements. I think he uses a lot of the same camera movements, which really makes it repetitive to look at. Usually when I see beginner animations, they often use the same keyframe setup for their camera. Often they just set 2 keyframes and set the interpolation mode to either linear, which is from A to B with a constant speed, or the Bezier curve, which is from A to B with a slow start, fast middle and slow ending. He actually uses the last camera movement 3 times in a row, as you might see. Not only is it very repetitive, but I also think the Bezier interpolation is the most digital camera movement you can create. This is because it's a very hard camera movement to create in real life. So the fact that he uses this camera movement so much really doesn't help sell this as a real shot. As I've said before, I really like the beginning because it's filled with action and nice lighting that really makes it interesting. And at the same time, the camera is moving really fast, which really creates a lot of tension and action. However, suddenly he creates this very slow shot. And I think this is a shame because it really sucks the life out of the commercial. We have already seen 80% of what is in the shot and it's not that interesting to look at. Furthermore, the lighting is not that special, and even though we have this cool shift in depth of field, I don't really think it's an interesting shot. At the end of the day, it's just a pair of headphones. So to make this more interesting, I would probably have animated the headphones so that there will be some movement in the shot. Otherwise, it's just a very basic slow tilt and it's not that interesting to look at. Next up is this shot. I think this is an example of an overuse of the depth of field effect. This is because the depth of field effect doesn't really serve a purpose in this case. Usually when you blur out a shot, it's because you want the viewer to look at something else, but there is nothing else to look at in this shot. We can only see the headphones, so the depth of field just makes the headphone blurry and then sharp afterwards. I would probably have added in a focal element in the foreground, like an iPhone or something playing a nice song, and then blur out the iPhone afterwards so that we look at the headphones instead. So let's talk about the model itself. As you might notice, the headset's wire is not plugged in anywhere in the last shot, and you can also see that it's not a finished model, because the end of the cable, it's not done. There is no end of the cable, it's just a very simple wire. I also think the edges on the headset are too sharp. I really don't want to cut my hands when I put on my headset, and it looks like very sharp knives. So I would probably have beveled the edges just a tiny bit. The last thing I want to talk about is the material. I'm personally not sure if this is a plastic headset or a metal headset. This is probably because of the specular value. I believe it is set too high. I have a pretty good idea of which part of the headset should be metal and plastic, so I would probably emphasize this a lot. My tip would be to create a bigger contrast between the materials. I would make the metal more shiny and reflective and maybe give it a brighter color. But overall, this is a very great animation, and the fact that you only have 1 year of experience just makes it greater. Good job, Akramul, you are definitely approved. Last up, we have Mahfouz Niaz, who has almost 1 year of experience with Blender, and he's created this awesome sci-fi scene. First of all, I just want to say this is a very cool render. I really like the modeling and the fact that the floor is reflecting the light from the ceiling. This really gives it this sci-fi look. Well, I think that's enough praise. Let's tear this piece apart. Just kidding. But let's try to improve it in some different ways. I like the composition and the way in which that the hallway draws your eyes towards the exit at the bottom of the hall. However, at the end there's just black. There's nothingness, and that is really a shame. I would probably have put a planet in the background or something interesting to look at. That would really have helped this render. I'm a big fan of surface imperfections, so I really like the floor texture. However, it really looks like a tile texture. It's the same surface imperfection all over the floor. I would probably have created some bigger and smaller patches of wet floor. That would have made more sense. But let's talk about sense. Why is the floor wet in the first place? That doesn't really make sense to me, but I guess there's a story behind this photo, which I would love to hear at one point. I think some of the edges are quite well beveled, and it looks like some very nice hard surface modeling. However, other edges are insanely sharp, like for example the floor. So remember to bevel those edges, it just looks way more pleasing and way more realistic. I think it's pretty obvious that this scene just screams array modifier. I believe you have created one section of the scene and then just copy pasted it for the rest of the hallway. And there's nothing wrong with this, but you should definitely have put some variation in the floor or in the walls, maybe put up some posters or something like that to break up that very obvious pattern. When you're creating a still image, you should also think about the story behind the photo and how you can get people to think of the story that you intended for the photo. And I gotta be honest, I don't really see a story behind this photo. Essentially, it's just a hallway with some wet floors. I would have loved to seen some different models that would nudge my brain into thinking that this would be outer space, or maybe it's an alien prison or something like that, but I think there's too much left for the imagination. With that said, I also want to say very good job. This is a very nice render, and I think a lot of people with almost 1 year of experience with Blender would be quite proud to produce such an image. Well guys, that was it for my art critique video. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know in the comments, or if you didn't like this format, please let me know as well, because I really want to know what you guys want to see. If you learned something or just felt entertained, feel free to drop a like. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.